Hi, my name is Andres Sanchez, Andres Business Finance. And today we have a special guest that we had before on the podcast, a great friend of mine, knowledgeable person in all of the government contracting, Mr. Mike Menaheim with GodBidPro.com. Mike, how are you today?
Hey, how you doing today, Andre? It's good to be here.
I love always catching up with you. We're always bouncing ideas. We're always remembering, okay, what happened, a couple of years ago, what happened today? Well, what is happening right now in 2025 in the government contracting sector. So I'm really excited to talk to you about all of the points and how all of these things that are happening are really bringing a lot of benefits for business owners, for companies, for trades that are going to impact positively the government contracting sector. So, Mike, I wanted to start with a brief reintroduction of who you are, if you don't mind me sharing. We are looking at what is the new landscape in government contracting. Why? Because Mike happens to be an expert in this field. Mike is the founder of GovBitPro.com, and you are a seasoned expert in government contracting with over 9 years of experience. And you specialize in bid capture, proposal, preparation, and contract management, helping small businesses, including woman-owned, veteran-owned, minority-owned firms, succeed in the government contract markets. You're a graduate from CW Post College of Management, and you also have a banking mortgage background, which that's really where we have commonalities right there. And you're a proud Buffalo native and a fan of the Sabres. Right now, you have offices in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Tampa, Florida. Well,
Okay.
so Mike, tell me a little bit about what is the new landscape in government contracting? What are you seeing right now? Because I know that the last time we discussed, it was pretty much, the similar landscape that was for years when it comes to requests for proposals, requests of all of the steps. So what are basically the changes that you've seen lately compared to before?
Sure. Now, thanks for that, Andreas. First of all, we are going to have a cutback in the workforce at the federal level in terms of federal workforce. So what you're going to see in that is early retirements. You're going to see outsourcing of training of middle management to the senior management that are retiring. Maybe they take an early retirement and they go to, let's say, the private sector jobs. That's something we could talk about later, is the transfer of someone from say, a state department or Department of Transportation to a private sector job, which is a higher end, and they're working for a big organization to build their highway. There'll be some opportunities. There'll be some new businesses where a new business might form and they need furniture and office space and computers. What the government's looking for with all this, they're looking to outsource a lot. They're looking to cut back on certain federal government employees. They can outsource training and auditing and some of the softer skills. They are looking for subject matter experts at this point. In terms of resellers, we're seeing less of that. We are seeing less bids, more quality versus quantity, but we are seeing that the government's looking for SMEs, subject matter experts that are saying, hey, I'm a good trainer when it comes to HR. I'm a good auditor when it comes to auditing fiscal budgets or something like that. That's going to be so the outsourcing. So the next piece that comes after that is the having Elon Musk and the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, which by the way is not a real government agency. It's a consulting firm essentially, and they're bringing Elon Musk as a contractor. This is going to be a huge opportunity? Is, say, for example, the Small Business Administration be able to talk to and communicate in terms of software and computers and just be able to agency have to talk to each other. Say, for example, the SBA being able to talk to the VA. So, for example, having a veteran-owned business, right? It's a veteran, and they have to register with the VA, but they also want to register to sell to the government, so they have to register with the SBA. So the SBA, Small Business Administration, has to talk to the VA. And so that's something, the inefficiency that we're seeing in government that's being corrected, where for example, the SBA has to talk to the VA. And later on, we're going to see where the DOD has to talk to the Social Security Administration. The government has to talk to each other. The left hand has to know what the right hand's doing.
Well, I mean, and you bring a good point. You know, I think that most people they let their emotions flow. Everybody's afraid to change. Always, it happens for everybody, and the personal and the business side as well. The people that understand and plan better and take the opportunity that change brings is really the ones that are going to win in basically this situation. I know that I wanted to ask you because of your background. This is the beauty of what you know and how much knowledge you bring people that are either looking to get into the government contracting sector because you already know how we used to work before, and now you know how it's going to be flowing and working. Now, again, everything is changing as we speak. That's where we're going to have weekly updates of what is going on in government contracting, and you're going to be able to guide us into that. And so people are going to be able to tune in and see what are the next things that are coming in government contracting sector and how it can learn weekly with the new changes and news and that are affecting really this particular operations. But I did wanted to ask you because most people really they want to get it started in government contracting, or some of them already have started to work with government contracting, but they're up to a certain level. So what are you looking for when you are consulting with a company that wants to start working in government contracting with the new landscape? What are the ingredients that you're looking for?
That's a great question, Andres. I appreciate you asking that. And so this government, this administration, and the fact that we know is going to change and they're going to make all these cutbacks, there's two types of products/services that we're looking for. Number one is inbound. Well, it's versus, right? So it's inbound versus outbound. What does that mean? And this is a concept that I talk about. So inbound is, for example, I'll just get right into the example. Inbound is, let's say I resell laptops and desktops and printers and IT equipment. So the Defense Department or Homeland Security or the VA, the post office needs computers. And so they consume these computers. I, as a small business, get a purchase order from the US government for 200 computers, and I resell these computers and I buy them from CDW or Tech Data and I drop ship them. And so let's say it's the VA or the post office, they consume these computers. And a story. That's inbound. That doesn't help anybody. The only people it helps is the people at the post office or VA that are going to be using these new computers. So what this administration is going to look for, and this is something that we talk about in what you asked me in terms of the consulting, is we look for outbound products and services. What does that mean? We're looking for, and this is what the government's going to do, is say the government's looking to help the taxpayer. They're looking to assist airports and schools and jails and people and hurricane preparation and the cybersecurity and the data centers and the AI that's coming out. They're looking to help the people that live in this country, right? So they're looking to, let's say, crazy little example, like sandbags for, what do you call it, hurricane preparation, homeless veterans, right? So they're going to work with the VA and we're going to work with HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, to create the housing with like these one bedrooms. They're like 200 square feet, these boxables, and they're going to put the homeless veterans in these. This is a project that we're working on, right? But you see where I'm going. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look, what is really the government trying to do? So the government is trying to be able to function. In order to be able to function, why we need small businesses that need to provide the services. So the government needs goods and services, number one, right? To be able to function. They operate, yes. They do work to be able to keep the country running. Well, they're going to need technology. They're going to need office equipment. They're going to need medical equipment. You mentioned that. Construction, you see it because they have infrastructures that are going to need to be built and maintained by these government contracts. We also have transportation. We also have transport, logistics, and food and beverage, of course. So we have to remember that these are all sectors that the government is going to need to spend money to be able to keep functioning as a country. Like it doesn't matter how much efficiency really you want to have basically in any business, you still need to spend on several things to continue to keep going. Does that make Does that make sense on your
Yeah,
end?
absolutely. It's a very good pivot, Andres. What I want to talk about is the three areas where we see government bids. And that's where, my company, GovBid Pro, that's where we operate the most is on SAM.gov. And we help the prospects and clients with registration. And we're in the open market bids that are on SAM.gov as well as GSA eBuy, as we see this on a daily basis. I have the thumb on the pulse on all these bids. And the three main areas that we're seeing focus, like you just said, is number one is IT. I know I keep going back to the IT, but cybersecurity and data
I
centers
love it.
and artificial intelligence that's where this government's going. One of the first things that President Trump did is he brought in the IT guys and he says, we're going to spend $500 billion on this. We need to be at the forefront of this AI. We do not want AI in the wrong hands. Moving on, medical device and nurse staffing and all this medical sector, the VA is the biggest healthcare system on the planet. All the VA hospitals that handle all the veterans. And that's where I talked about earlier about the outbound. So the government wants to buy new medical equipment to support the veterans that are using the VA hospitals. We also want to protect healthcare and the patient records. That's very vulnerable information. So that's an important thing that go back to the IT. The third, the construction. You've got airports that get federal money. Tampa Airport is building a new area. You've got other airports growing. Las Vegas airport's growing. So those are run by, and this is a good segue for us to talk about, is there's also SLED, state, local, and education. So those government areas also get federal funds. So the perfect example is when an airport like a Tampa or Orlando, or maybe not Florida, like a Vegas airport, gets money from the federal government to put in a new area, to put in a new
Expansion.
airport. Yeah, extension, exactly. So
Mhm.
it's federal money, and they got to use. I'm going on a rabbit hole a little bit here, but they use federal acquisition regulation, FAR, and that's something we're very familiar with. So that's something that we need to talk about with the audience, is this federal acquisition regulation. And in defense, it's DFAR, which of course the D stands for defense. So it's defense federal acquisition regulation. But those federal funds are used in airports and jails and schools. And those entities are in municipalities all over the country.
Well, yeah, I love it because one of the things that we actually, I was attending, and this is just a side note. I was attending an event here in Houston, Texas, which was the Houston Business Expo. Shout out to my friend Freddie Gorges, which puts together this event here in Houston. Amazing, over 1,500 to 2,000 attendees. Who was there? Metro, which is from the city of Houston. There was a lot of municipalities and government entities that were there. Why? Because they were looking to connect with small businesses to be able to put them on the list of be able to get into government contracts and suffice for services that the government needs to fulfill. Which takes me to the question that really ties us into why it's important to work with an advisor like you that on the government contract sector. What are the first 3 steps a business should take if they want to pursue government contracting this year in 2025?
That's a great question. So the first thing that I would do is look at the past. Let's look in the rearview mirror and see, does your product sell into government? And okay, who won and for how much and how many bids were out there? If there was 1,000 bids for widgets last year, we've got something here. Okay, now for how much?
Mm-hmm.
Because the finance piece is very important because government gets what's called government pricing. So they get a better deal. It's the same laptop. It's the same computer. It's the same medical device, but they're getting government pricing. It's brand new. I have a client that's in 3D printers, right? And so they sold 10 quantity 3D printers to the government, delivered the printers, put them up in the second floor of this building, did the training, and provided the warranty. The government wants everything. They want the whole.
And they have to maintain it, right? If they have to maintain it, like if there's maintenance, most people don't understand the value of technology. Now, technology means, hey, if let's say we're going to get into now, we're having this conversation through technology. Well, this technology needs to function in order for us to be able to continue to inform people, get things done, get the contracts done, get everything. So And that piece of technology is very interesting. So you said, look at the past, look at the
Look at the
tickets,
past.
look at how much really the tickets have been. What are the
Right.
other questions that I should ask myself if
Okay,
I want to
great.
get to?
Also take a look at if any of the I call them the big houses like the Raytheons and the Boeings and the Honeywells, if they bought any of the products, because subcontracting is also an opportunity. So again, we want to look at the past and look at the tickets in the past. We want to see what's in the budget. The big beautiful bill, is your product in there? It should be. If it is, great. Then, if you want to be proactive, you want to take a look at, let's say you sell a product that's good for, let's say it's a medical device and it's good for the Veterans Administration. Okay, then we need to create a
Mhm.
list of all these procurement managers at the VA that we can reach out to, and that they can, what they'll do is, there's a process that what they'll do is they'll put a request for information out. You want to be in front of the bid. And so it's a sources sought market research. And we talk about this in our consultations one-on-one with the prospects and say, you want to get ahead of the bid and send in a capability statement, which we can create to the government when they put a request for information out. So now your foot's in the door. They haven't bought it yet. They haven't put a request for quote out yet, but you've got preparation. And so this is something that's you and I, Andres, have talked offline about, is processes
Right.
and systems in place.
Before the sale, it comes the request for information, RFI, as which most people fail in that first step. They
Yes.
don't do it properly if they don't know how it works. That's why I love working with you. Like how this works. What is the government looking to basically understand about the RFI? Because a lot of people, it's the same way as I look at it personally as what Evermart Capital does for SBA. So when we're looking at capitalizations of SBA tools, SBA 7A, 504, well, we gather the information. We look at the basically all of the ingredients really of the company. If it really makes sense to go through the SBA route, which we will want to, because again, SBA is there to be able to support the growth of small businesses by providing ease of lending through different channels. And that's why we have we have lenders. A good chunk of those are SBA. That's why we do it this way, so we can provide the better options for the clients. Now, it's the same thing that you do, but on the analysis of the business, RFI, to be able to get that information really well proposed to the government.
And that's very important, the finance piece, because I'll say this. Once you're at RFQ level, now you quote, there is competition. The government will most likely take either lowest price technically acceptable, or they'll look at subjective and they'll say, as for past performance. And so you have to prepare all these things. But this is where you and I connect, Andreas, really on the systematic level, is the government wants you to deliver first as a small business. And that's your audience, my audience, is the government wants you to deliver these widgets to Tampa, Florida, MacDill Air Force Base. Great. And so now you have to finance that purchase. Right?
Yeah.
So you would work with a company like Evermart Capital to finance that purchase, to deliver to MacDill Air Force Base, and then to invoice invoice MacDill Air Force Base after you deliver, to get paid by the government. The
Yep.
government always pays. If you do it right, you check off, you check, cross all the T's and dot all the I's, you'll get paid every time. I've been doing this 20 years. Before I worked for another company, it was MSP that did physical security. And that's how I started GovBid Pro. Is if we did the invoice correctly and we delivered everything that was in the contract, we got paid net 30.
Well, absolutely. No, I love it, because one of the first things that I try to understand about a business. Yeah, really, who is this business selling to? And is that a strength or is that a weakness? Is there concentration? I mean, when we talk about, a lot of the clients, they need to understand, okay, well, I've seen basically companies being able to be in the private sector, then jump into the government contract sector and literally like double or triple. Why? Because they created another, call it division, which is still, I do the same things, but now I do it with the government. Cash flow on the private sector versus the government sector is different. So guess what?
Yep.
It creates balances. It creates an ability to maintain through different time slots. And also, well, think about this. Well, once you're with the government is going to continue to hire you and contract you. Private sector, if an opportunity dries out because maybe industry or the company or I mean, we looked at it, with several national companies that, okay, we built as many restaurants as we could. Now we're done building restaurants because we don't have
Yeah,
anywhere else to expand. Well, that
right.
opportunity kind of dries out, right? So we need to understand, wait, but the government, is it ever going to dry out? No, not at all. We need to continue to function. So you have to position yourself. I love that. I love that piece, Mike.
I do want
And
to put an exclamation point on what you just said, and that is you can take it with IT or concrete construction, and that is you want to take a small business, the audience, right, and say, okay, let's say you're an MSP and you've got suppliers that supply you with laptops, desktops, printers, or you're maybe a construction company and you've got a supplier for tools, supplier for lumber, supplier for concrete, right? So you've got, like you said, the private sector cash flow where you're doing jobs and you're doing bids and you're doing construction, you're building hospitals, you're building homes. Now you've got this whole ecosystem. You've got this entire business with credit, and you've got a relationship with the sales rep at the concrete company, at the lumber company, at the tool company. Maybe you know somebody at Home Depot, great, or Lowe's or whatever. So now you leverage those relationships. And so, for example, I have an MSP, managed service provider. It's an IT company. They run around town and they fix, if you get a blue screen, they come fix it. Your printer breaks, they come fix it. So that they have relationships with the Tech Datas and the CDWs of the world, the IT distributors. They want to drop ship computer equipment to government in San Diego, in Miami, in Texas. They already have the relationship. They already have the $1 million credit with this IT distributor. So you can leverage, and you mentioned that the cash flow is different with government. You got to be there and have, we talk about this on our website in the reseller training, is the government's really going to pay later than 30 days. Normally, we're looking at 30 to 45, maybe 60. Some in
yep.
SLED, state local education, it might say in the contract, hey, it's going to be net 45. That's cash flow for them. So you have to have two sets of credit, one with the supplier, and then maybe with FMR Capital, you create a credit facility to pay the supplier to owe the money, and then you wait for the government to pay you, and then you pay that. Like, for example, one of my clients has a credit with the supplier, and then they have a line of credit at the bank. So they use the line of credit at the bank to pay off the supplier at day 30. And then when the government pays in day 45, they pay off the bank and they're back to zero and they keep
Correct.
the difference.
Well, I love that. And that's why when you're preparing to be able to suffice on these government contracts, I always say, look, get a free capital evaluation. Make sure that you understand how your cash flow is going to be affected. Make sure you prepare yourself. And most people really, well, they want to do the sell, but they don't understand how the sufficing the contract and the cash flow is going to affect their operations. Because, I mean, a lot of times, cash flows are kind of broken into a business. Get an evaluation so we can create the tools properly to be able to help you not destabilize, in this particular case. So I love that piece.
Right. So I want to put another exclamation point on what you just said. Is that's something that we provide also for our prospects, and say, hey, let's sit down and talk for 15, 20 minutes and let's offer you a consultation. Inside that consultation, I can give you an assessment and say, this is what you need to do. For example, I've got a prospect right now that builds heavy duty surveillance systems. And I'm looking at this product and going, hey, this would be good for border surveillance. That is a big issue right now. The DHS, Homeland Security, Border Patrol, that's a big issue right now, of course. Now, a year ago, I would have told the guy, I said, forget it. You're not doing this. But now I'm saying, you've got a market here. You've got an administration that wants your product. So that's another piece that we talk about, is say, to tell people now in June of 2025, look, the Trump-Vance administration will buy your product. The Biden-Harris administration may have not bought your product. Two different agendas.
Different governments have different initiatives.
That's it. But that's something that we do is provide an assessment by looking at, like you said, a SWOT analysis, looking at the product, looking at the past. The other thing that we do, I just want to throw this back out there, is that the fact that we've got our thumb on the pulse, we're connected with some of the state governments as well as federal government. And so they'll give us information on what's called industry days and reverse trade shows. That's very important for small business to go to these industry days. And some of these industry days, because of technology, just like the one we're using right now, the industry day is virtual. And it could be a Coast Guard base in Clearwater, Florida, that's saying, hey, the first 100 people, send us a capability statement. You'll be invited to this Coast Guard base, and we're going to tell you what we're going to buy in the next 12 months. So
That
if you're
sounds
a
sounds pretty cool. And
yeah,
you and well, because you're in this world, I mean, that's why you are so connected into this. I wanted to point that out, why it's so important to work with you, Mike, because again, the government is going to need goods and services. Your company, GovBid Pro, specializes in government bids preparation, sourcing, understanding where the opportunities are, the proposals, the contract management. And that's how the small business sector can really win. So I really love, like, I mean, that's why when I talk to you, we understand how much the government is really changing right now, a lot of the initiatives, and we mentioned this before. But why is it important? Because I want people to pay attention into weekly what is going on with the news, what is going on with the government sector. Why is it important to get an advisor like you so you can actually get into working on these proposals, preparations, and everything? Now, and we mentioned this before, but I want to say it, so people understand. This is not a one hit and that's it. And no, this is really you understanding that you're building something for the long run. So it takes some time, more than, let's say, selling a lot of times to the private sector. Now in the private sector, I've seen contracts that have taken 2-3 years to get the yes from companies. I mean, personally, like, I mean, we work with different companies that have been in that space waiting. Now, a government contract, how, just to give a perspective, how long does it take really for a company that wants to dive in first time into government contracting? How long does it take usually for a company to get this contract?
that's a great question. The process from a skeleton standpoint is about the same. So in other words, even though we're seeing all these different initiatives, we're still seeing bid capture. And then let me talk about the process itself and then dive into each one. So bid capture is when you're on sam.gov and you're looking for bids. There certainly is less
Mhm.
bids because the government's cut back a little bit. They cut back on the resellers. They cut back on because they're cutting back on staff. And the Doge has cut back. So there's less bids, but more quality. And we talked about earlier about the government wanting subject matter experts and more of the services. So in terms of bid capture, there's going to be, I tell people, be flexible. So in other words, if you're a management consultant and the government's looking for intelligence analyst, could that be for you? Take a look at it. So that's something that we do. That's the value that we bring to the table is we're sifting through all these bids all day long, my staff and I,
Mhm.
and emailing the audience, the small business saying, hey, take a look at this bid. Here's the link. Here's the PDF. So that's the bid capture piece. So it does take some time because what we'll do is our CRM is built on bids due in the future, bids due like next week, and then bids that we've submitted. So it's broken down. And so we have a system in place. To answer your question, we're talking about a good 3 to 6 months. There is strong competition. However, we are seeing some players exiting the market and saying, hey, government's not for us. This is going to take too long. And there's going to be people that when they see a market, it take too long, pay too slow, too much volatility, too much change. People are going to leave, right? So the question is, are you a person that runs for the exit sign? Are you a person that sees people running to the exit and you go into the market, or do you stay put? So that's what people have to ask themselves in terms of the assessment. Now, the second piece is the proposal writing. That's where we save a lot of time for the small businesses that are like, what do I send the government? Okay, I'm interested in this bid for widgets. What do I send? We know what to send. They'll be in the RFP. It'll say, and each one's different. So then there's the proposal writing piece, which we'll do for our clients. And then the third thing is submission, how to submit. So to answer your question, we're talking about a good 6 months.
Well, and,
This
and
is a
nothing
long,
wrong with that. I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to interrupt.
right?
And there's nothing
That's
wrong
right.
with that. Look, because I look, if it was If it wasn't, I mean, as we can tell, and as you know, well, the government is, well, our government of the United States of America, it's a large institution. So guess what? Things are still needed so much, to be able to function, to be able to do things properly. Now, for those people that don't understand the opportunity or that they don't see it because, again, they want to focus on the negativity of the headlines, I say, wow, this is the greatest opportunity for small business sectors, for small businesses to be able to get into government contracting. Because yes, as you mentioned, a lot of other companies that maybe they don't like the new model or the new requirements. They just want to, go away. Now, good for them. I mean, if they
Exactly.
want to leave, if you know that this is one of the best opportunities that you can have, please absolutely get a consultation with Mike. Get a, look at your company, look at like what you said, look at the past, look at what I've done, look at the tickets, look at how much opportunity it can be.
Right. Look at and be connected into the events, be connected into the reverse trade shows. Another thing that we're implementing this year because of the new administration, because of the new model, we used to be 6 months or 1 year retainer agency agreement with our clients, right? So in other words, you signed up for 1 year and I did 100 bids for you for X amount of dollars and whatever we negotiated. Now, because things are more volatile, people are a little more nervous, right? I get that. So what we're saying to people is, look, here's what we're going to offer you. Number one is it's 3 months. And if you want 2 months, no problem. Or if you want a month, I get it. And the price
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. In fact, it's on our website under training and support. So inside 3 months, you're going to get 6 bids. You're going to get 2 bids a month. You're going to get the ebook, the PDFs, the guides, the templates, and you're going to get 3 1-hour training sessions. That we call it the ramp up service because what it is you're going to see, hey, is this for you or not? And that's a great, it's a test drive. Instead of us getting married, let's go on a date, on a couple dates, that kind of thing. And that's a pretty good analogy, I guess. And so for 90 days, you try out my service. We're going to give you 110%. I'm going to show you everything there is about government in what we've talked about the last half an hour, and there's so much more that we can talk about. Again, we're going to give you all the collateral. We're going to do a handful of bids. We are going to have a 4th of July promo that gives people a free month. So it's 4 months instead of 3 months for the same price. And so that's a good place to start, as to say, you know what, let's give this thing a try for 3 months and let's see what happens. Before you know it, it's the end of September. The fiscal year for the federal government ends at the end of September. So we're going to know what 2026 is going to look like because this government's going to negotiate the 2026 budget probably around late summer, early fall. So that's something I wanted to share with you. Instead of a small business committing to 1 year, just commit to 3 months. 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, say, hey, this isn't for us. Okay, no harm, no foul. But you got good value. You got a capability statement. You got, by the way, 14 on-demand training videos also included. That's me training you, 14 different training videos. I want to pivot for a second on that. And this is
Mm-hmm.
something we can actually dive into maybe in the next videos, in the next podcast, is that there's three groups of companies right now. And so people say, okay, what kind of group, in terms of the assessment, either group number one,
Uh-huh.
you've got a contract and you need to know what's going on with that contract. You would hire a group like us to be like, hey, what's going on with the contract? Let's get a hold of the contract manager. What do you know? The contract manager took the severance package. You need to know, right? Okay. Group number two is the companies that did bids last year, whether they did bids with us or not. And they're like, hey, what's going on with this bid? I've got a client that's an MSP that they took 2 weeks to write a 50-page proposal. And there's a lot of content in this proposal. They're like, hey, what's going on with this bid? You put 2 weeks of work into it. So there's the groups that did bids. And the third group is that have neither. They don't have a contract. They didn't do any bids. They want to know, hey, how do I get into this? So most small businesses fall into those 3 buckets.
Well, yes, actually, there's so much to talk about this, and I honestly don't think that we can do it in only one podcast. That's why we're having a weekly update from now on into what is going on in the government contracting sector, what is going on with the news, how are they affecting the new contracts, the requirements, the new people also. I mean, I think that one of the things that we wanted to discuss next is for not only for the one is for current companies or current small businesses that are doing government contracts, how to review the new opportunities and really take advantage of that, number one. Number two is, and I want to remind you, is okay, so for the people that have worked at the federal workforce, is there an opportunity for them into government contracting? Does that make sense for you, Mike, or not? What do you think?
Yes, it does. Yeah, no, that's a great point. You've got companies that are working with the federal government. They've got to reassess. They've got to re-strategize. That's one area. You've got an opportunity as a small business owner for small businesses that offer services to other small businesses for former federal employees that either have taken a severance or early retirement or just decided, you know what, this isn't for me. There's people that I know that have just resigned and said, forget it. I'm out of here. Yeah. And there's folks, unfortunately, that they got laid off, but they get severance packages. They're like, okay, what do I do now? And meanwhile, they worked at the federal government for 5, 10, 20 years, maybe shorter, but so there's that opportunity. We could talk about subcontracting. The good news about former federal employees, they know the inside of what they worked inside the government. They might even have top secret clearance. That's something we need to talk about. And so,
Well, I'm going to tell you, these people that you're mentioning right now, what they need to do. They need to talk to you. They need to go to your website. They need to contact you and explain to you really what happened, what they've been doing with the government, and see basically what is the opportunity. That's what I believe in. And I wanted to bring this up because we talk about this in particular. What is it that most business owners that want to evaluate government contracting right now in this new environment, what do they need? Here's the list. Take a snapshot. That handsome guy right there is waiting for your call. Make sure that you get your website, your phone number, professional email address, everything, social media, the corporate structure that you have, the business banking these are all the steps that you are going to be able to do. So I wanted to just mention this so people remember where they need to look for when it comes to doing government contracts.
yeah, and let me just put an exclamation point on that. That's a great segue, Andreas, is just have all your stuff together. Your website, your phone number, your email address. Don't have a Gmail. Go ahead and get a domain name like at Evamar Capital or at govbidpro.com. Have all your social media. The government, they've got computers too. And when they look at your quote, let's say you fast forward, you send in a proposal, you send in a quote. They're on Google looking for you and going, oh, hey, this is, and if they can't find your company, they'll be like, hey, why would we give these people a purchase order? So have all that ready. When you do SAM registration, I just want to scratch the surface real quick on this. They're going to ask for all this stuff. These are different screens. They're checking, and we could talk about this further. They're checking to see that you're an American company. You're not in Syria, North Korea. Russia is another country. They're looking to see that you've got a physical address in the United States. And then you don't have unpaid taxes or unpaid child support, that kind of thing, or any felonies for that matter. You don't need top secret clearance, but you need to be a good standing citizen to have what's called a cage code, and we'll talk about that in the future. But we consult folks on their registrations, and then there's set asides. We could talk about that later, where people are veteran-owned businesses and they have to register as a veteran, or they're a woman-owned business, or they're a 8A minority status business. So there's those opportunities as well. That's, again, plenty to talk about.
You are completely correct, Mike. I mean, we will not be able to bring all of the steps, all of the information that you need to gather and everything into one podcast. We're going to definitely be bringing you segments of the steps that you need to take. Next week, we're going to find out basically how to start into government contracting, what documents, what would be the steps. Maybe we're going to touch on some NIACs or industries that maybe that you can bring us to say, hey, like the government is looking for this. This is what we see in this sector. If you are in this sector, the government wants to talk to you and wants you to provide you with these products and services. So Mike, any other information that we should know, anything else that you want our listeners to prepare for next week, or anything in particular that you would like us to close with?
Yeah. I think that the premise of everything, and I appreciate the opportunity, first of all. So 2 thumbs up for Evermar Capital and your group. for this, what I would say is go out and come talk to us. It's completely complimentary for you to talk to me for 15 minutes and say, hey, is this worth it? I had a conversation the other day with a gentleman, in fact, here in Sarasota. He's just not ready. He's not ready. He's providing a service for veterans. Okay. I told him, I said, let's talk next month and let's keep it going. You have to be ready. You have to have all your ducks in a row. And that's where the assessment comes in. It doesn't hurt to talk to an expert. And that's what we're talking about is always pick up the phone, reach out, email, or IM to an Evamar Capital, Andreas, or myself, Mike Benham here at GovBid Pro. We're happy to talk to you for 15, 20 minutes and say, I'm talking to someone tomorrow and it's a new prospect. I said, jump on my calendar. Let's talk for 15 minutes. It's not going to hurt anybody. So, I'm going to ask you the right questions. You're going to hear about some of the experiences that I have, and you're going to get maybe even a crash mini assessment of what you need to do. Maybe this is the wrong time. I've got a group in Phoenix, for example. They're not ready. Here's a good example. There's a group in Phoenix that wants to sell into jails. Okay. Well, the jails are run by the states. There's also jails run by the federal government. But so now they have to register with each of the states. Okay. Well, which state do you have to register with? Okay. Well, you don't want to do, let's say, a state like Delaware. You do want to do a state like Texas. So you have to have someone do the registration. So that comes with the assessment that we want to talk to someone about. So they have to be ready to do the registrations with Texas and Florida and Tennessee. Those are growing states in this country. So we've got to peel back and see, okay, we want you to register. Right. The onion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
We want to
so
see.
I'll give you a story. I'll give you a brief story about that. Actually, I had a client of mine that, and we're talking about prisons. I'm sorry. We're talking about jails and prisons. So they were doing some work with a prison in Hawaii. All right. Well, I'm like, okay, how do I get those? That's what I asked. I asked them. I'm like, how do I get a contract with Hawaii? I want to go. I want to go work in Hawaii for 6 months and enjoy that beautiful weather and the island. So look, even those opportunities are out there. If you talk to Mike, if you talk to us, of course, with Evermar Capital too, we can direct you into that. But those are great examples. Look, there's so many examples that we can give to people today. But let's close it up. Let's get them some information for next week. We have a couple of subjects that we want to touch on next week, which is going to be how do you get started, either if you already have government contracts or if you don't. And we're going to walk you through some of the steps. We're going to give you a checklist. We're going to give you some information. So I hope that you tune in and share that time with us next week so we can get it together. And Mike, I want to thank you again so much for all of the information. You're always a wealth of knowledge. And I look forward to seeing a lot more people helping the government, function properly by providing the goods and services that they already do. And I look forward to seeing you again.